Today, video is eating the web, really.
And Netflix is 15% of all internet traffic.
As YouTube approaches its 14th birthday, it's feeling some growing pains.
Today, the future of video. This is FutureForward. I'm DeRose.
And I'm Steve Rosenbaum, and let's launch. Hey, Gene.
Hey, how you doing?
You know, I didn't think we were going to do the future of video, but then when you start to look at the future of video, it's so fabulously complicated. You know, we'll start with some data, then we're going to dig into a weird YouTube mess, then we're going to get to some more YouTube stuff, and at the end, there are some really good apps on the horizon that might be the future of video. But let's just start right up at the top. Netflix remains the 800-pound gorilla of streaming in the world. Video from the service consumes a significant 15% of all internet bandwidth. This is according to a terrific article in Variety. Does that make sense to you? Like that number?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that you have to contextualize it a little bit because, and I've seen this before, because there's a piece of data that's been floating around for years that says, you know, video is going to be 80% of all internet traffic. And when they say that, they're talking about bandwidth. They're not talking about consumption. They're not talking about number of users. They're not talking about dollars, right? And they're not talking about time you spend, but it is consuming that much bandwidth. And look, it's notable regardless. Just, you know, a little detail out of that is YouTube isn't too far behind at 11+%. So when you think about that, Netflix plus YouTube make up a fourth of global internet traffic as measured by bandwidth.
So, you know, first of all, it's tricky, right? Because the word video means a bunch of things. So do you mean people passively sitting and consuming TV shows? Or do you mean people recording, you know, doing video chat? Do you mean people recording videos and sharing them with their friends? You know, there's some pretty big, I didn't actually pull the clips, so, you know, right. My apologies, but there's actually some pretty big porn numbers.
Yep. Right. HTTP, you know, streaming traffic is up there. I think that part of the answer to your question is sort of about what else, because certainly just isolating YouTube and isolating Netflix and a few other things, they are what they are, unless they're missing bandwidth from other places, you know, who knows? And it's also important to note that this is downstream video. So this is what you receive. You know, YouTube and others would occupy a lot of upstream as well. And there are cuts on the US as well. One notable amazing point is that there are times, especially on weekends, when Netflix can occupy up to 40% of downstream traffic in the US, which is pretty astonishing.
Yeah. As our kids say, chill in Netflix. We're going to chill in Netflix.
Chill in Netflix.
Yeah,
and,
which used to be called watching television, but I'm dating myself. So if you go down to the charts that we now have, the other thing, by the way, that's interesting is the pretty dramatic discrepancy between YouTube and Netflix on one hand and Amazon Prime on the other. Although, I guess if you were being kind, you could glue together Amazon Prime and Twitch since they're both Bezos owned and operated.
Yeah, and I would just say this, you know, we always should be careful not to take everything at gospel. And I am a little suspicious that Amazon Prime could have that large a number. So it does make me wonder a little bit about it. And look, the broader point and the thing that is worth really thinking about is, you know, Netflix. You know, the dominance is unbelievable. And is it sustainable? Is it... we know they're not making money yet. Will they soon? Do they, you know, a lot of competition coming.
So one more thing that comes is that just looking at the Variety numbers, there is this surprising name at the bottom of the APAC video streaming popularity, Daily Motion at 4.9%.
Yeah. Daily Motion's been around for a while, and they're a curator that has, you know, done very well. They know how to index things. They show up in video searches a lot, and they're kind of a hybrid. You know, they're a place where things that might not pass YouTube standards go to have some presence often, but there's just a lot of stuff that's there in general.
And they're owned by Orange, the French telephone company.
I wouldn't. I don't remember. Yeah.
I'm going to say I'm pretty sure they are.
Yeah.
So all right. So let's zip along, because so we know that YouTube is big, right? So does that singularly make them the smartest guy in the room? And there's a story out that's getting a lot of play within the web video space, which we picked up from the New York Times. You might guess that a surefire way to make a hit video on YouTube would be to gather a bunch of YouTube megastars, film them riffing, and within 48 hours, this YouTube year in reverse has been disliked more than 4 million times. Like that's somebody made a mistake, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, it reminds me of Facebook recently and a few other big guys. Can they be tone deaf at managing, the vicissitudes of such a large, various, unruly crowd, that is their audience. And it's a little bit too cute. It's a little bit too much of the guys trying to sell ads and sell YouTube as a conventional place, getting called on it. And it's a bit of a tempest in the teapot. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how big of a deal it really is.
So I'm going to disagree with you. So YouTube's been around for 14 years. When's the last time? Well, so I every year go to the Google Upfront, which has another name, but it's essentially the new front. And last year, 2 years ago, the YouTube story was all about revolution and streets and politics, and it was very frothy and kind of bottom up, change the world, empowerment stuff. And then a year later, it was like, yeah, never mind. We're going to be about cooking and fashion and happy stories, and like you could feel the wheels coming off the bus of the young people that think of YouTube as being revolutionary, kind of coming headlong into the advertisers that say, we'd really, really like something safer, please.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're disagreeing. I think that there's some specifics here to just keep in mind, which is for the unruly masses that have become stars through YouTube, this is the show. For the big mainstream guys, it's just another place they are, even if they're getting obsessive and passionate about it. So you're going to hear louder voices, trickier and savvier abilities to mobilize. Things are going to go viral and memey a lot easier. And so they're going to have a certain voice that's a little louder. Look, my thing about this story reminds me again of Facebook. And in the sense, I know we've brought this up before, is that I believe major technology brands that are facing consumers want everything to be a software model, and they need more human intervention. They need staff. They need to manage the subtleties. To quote something from this Hill.com article that Emily Birnbaum wrote, a YouTube spokesman emphasized that YouTube is using machine detection more frequently than relying solely on users to flag harmful content. And 81% of the videos that are getting removed from YouTube as a rule are detected by machines. It's, I know that's not the same story as the viral complaint off of this, but I think what we're talking about is the conflict they have versus traditional and big guys versus their, the inmates running the prison.
So I guess I'm going to ask you.
You've been on both sides of it, by the way. I kind of feel like you've straddled it pretty well, or at least straddled
it. I have been on both sides. I've gotten takedown notices. I've issued takedown notices. I've gotten takedown notices for my own film. Yeah, I mean by a robot. But I guess the question I'm asking, not to put too fine a point on it, but for our listeners, is is YouTube over? Is it just another way to get OTT stuff?
I don't think so at all, because I think that for the grassroots guys, it's still a little bit the only game in town. I mean, I do feel like, I mean, look, we covered the launch of, Instagram video, and boy, talk about something that is quietly maybe going away. I'm not really quite sure what's going on, but and sure, Facebook is growing by leaps and bounds, but Facebook growing in video is the equivalent of Apple growing its audio streaming services, right? They have enough leverage to just blink and take some market share. I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like where else would you go if you're starting something unless you can sell it to Netflix?
So let's talk about like the statistics of these videos being removed, because it's a big number. So YouTube says it removed 58 million videos between July and September because they broke community guidelines.
Yep.
More than 7.8 million of those videos were taken down because they violated community guidelines. Fine. Another 50.2 million were taken down as YouTube removed 1.6 million channels. 1.6 million channels.
It's unbelievable, right? And they divide it into, things that might be harmful to children, things that just break their community guidelines, and, sex and violence. And look, it feels like a trend, doesn't it? Tumblr last week pulled a lot of stuff down. Facebook has gone through this. Twitter accounts have been removed. I do feel like some of this is in response to what Facebook is. They don't want to be victimized the way Facebook has by a lot of things, and so they're trying to get ahead of the game. But boy, they're really brutalizing people.
Well, let's just slip over to Tumblr for 1 second, even though it's not really a video story.
I know. Right.
I want to just say it here first so that I can claim credit. I think Tumblr is dead.
I think that you're probably right. I mean, I think that Tumblr, it needs the care and feeding to be innovative still. And, we can do a moratorium on Tumblr in a separate place, but it's betwixt and between, right? If it didn't become something that rivaled, that competed with the rise of Wix and Squarespace, what is it, right? Anyway, there was an elegance and a beauty to Tumblr in its heyday, and it's still out there, but it's kind of gone the way of what is it, Blogger? Is that what YouTube bought many, many, many years ago?
All right. So
Blogspot.
So let's talk for a minute about the PewDiePie story, because it is Tempest in a Teapot. This is the non-Tempest in a Teapot YouTube story, and you've got a little bit of a setup piece there, and then we'll talk about what's going on with PewDiePie.
Yeah, so PewDiePie, the most popular streamer on YouTube, has never shied away from controversy, but Sunday was a doozy even for him. He's a Swedish YouTube star, the number one guy on YouTube, number one entity on YouTube, whose real name is Felix Kjellberg. He's under fire after singing the praises of another streamer whose online presentations often included homophobic and anti-Semitic language. In that same stream, he raised eyebrows for calling a fellow streamer a crybaby and an idiot after she started the discussion about the earnings gap between male and female streamers. And by the way, this has occupied a huge space in the dialogue among YouTubers, much less the news that it's made.
So PewDiePie has been kind of at war with YouTube now for a couple of years. And he shut his channels down, he walked away, he took a break, he went online and said, I want to be he was no longer the biggest channel, and he essentially said to all of his friends and fans, make me the biggest channel, and started this kind of grassroots, upvote PewDiePie thing. He's, I've got to believe that, if you're at YouTube HQ, you're part of a number of meetings on a regular basis about PewDiePie.
Yeah. It's not an accident, because anyone that dove in and looked at this it's rife with more than flirtations with alt-right kind of stuff, and just hugely off base and terrible stuff. And honestly, enough of the meetings. they kind of have to take a stand. If they're pulling other things down, they need to have the stones to do this the right way, and he should be gone.
So I got to tell you though, I don't know him well. I mean, I don't know his work well, but I often have this sense that, he literally picks things to support or look at or promote, not because he has any strongly held belief, but just because he wants to rattle the cage a little bit. Like,
sure. Sounds like the president I know.
Well, I was trying not to compare PewDiePie to Donald Trump, but you went and did it, so.
Oh man, sorry, man.
Yeah, but like, I don't know.
What do you think the answer is? Because I guess I almost want to disagree with myself because there's First Amendment, and then there's the borderline, and there's Alex Jones and InfoWars. I mean, do we need better labels? And in a standardized approach? Should warnings go on some of this content? Like, how do you manage through this? I mean, I don't really know what the answer is. I'm not a person who is inclined to just pull things down, but they have to abide by standards that they set up. And maybe one of the things PewDiePie has figured out is how to avoid machine detection.
So the reason why I think this is a big story, and really as YouTube is turning 14, is potentially a critical one, is like the people that, if the purpose of YouTube is simply to be another OTT channel for makeup tips and, kind of hipster kid videos about cool stuff, that advertisers are fine with that. Advertisers pay for audience at scale. If it wants to be this radical, edgy, free speech, grassroots thing, then it kind of can't have it both ways. Like I don't think that, Oreo cookies want their ads next to PewDiePie.
Do you think that maybe they know that themselves?
Oh,
I don't know what the latest is on Red, but I do feel like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to kind of quietly create a clean, well-lighted for pay space for things that would be more traditional TV. But I don't necessarily think all the broadcasters want that, right? I mean, Jimmy Kimmel is as viral as the kids with the little bits that he pushes out there every night. So, let's just dwell for a second on OTT, because over the top, because I tend to think there's a sort of a bifurcation and it can be misconstrued, at least thematic, strategically, right? On the one hand, it's instead of getting your television through traditional means, instead of getting your traditional television and your broadcast. And then there's another version where it just encompasses non-traditional video, period, right? And I kind of think they're two different things, right? I want a better way, a cheaper way, a frictionless way to get my ball games and my HBO and everything else, which is very different than PewDiePie and us and everyone else. And YouTube, maybe what you're saying is right in the sense that YouTube at some point is going to have to decide which flank they want to protect.
Let's do those in order. No. I think that's exactly right. I sighed because it makes me a little sad because, I've spent a big chunk of my career believing that web video would be niche and narrowcast and subtle and would, 1,000 points of light, pardon the source, but like that it would be this revolution of interesting things that aren't necessarily mass media. And it seems, at least at the moment, like I might be wrong.
No, I think you're right. This is back to my and theory. It may not be separate from the YouTube issue itself, but I believe both will coexist. Traditional TV blew it a long time ago by being too constrained to let future television happen through that means. So they're both going to coexist. The question to me is, can YouTube really, own, play in all the different parts of it?
Look, just to finish on the PewDiePie thing, and then we'll get over to some data. I think the hypocrisy here, and what makes me angry, is YouTube says to PewDiePie, hey, listen, here's the deal. We pay for scale. So the more edgy you can be, the more clickbaity you can be, the more controversial you can be, the more likely you're going to get paid a lot. Oh, and by the way, don't do that.
Right.
Like,
So
he's
you're making a good point from your new fronts last year when they sort of invited this.
I mean, I think he's playing by the anyway. So let's dig. So now there's some numbers that are pretty interesting, and maybe it kind of brings it all together. So I'll just read you the clip here. It says the average Americans now watch 5 hours and 24 minutes per day of video content across TVs, phones, and PCs, according to Nielsen's Total Audience Report. That's that was kind of what started us down the road of doing this show. Was you looking at these numbers and saying, holy cow, this is a moment. Like, this is a sea change. Do you watch 5.5 hours a day?
Look, let's
no,
be
wait,
clear.
wait. Come on, fess up.
Do I? Yeah, a video.
Oh, please tell me.
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, but here's the thing that I think is important. Like I do with my kids, or at least my youngest kid right now, I've lost control of the older ones. It's screen time, which is not necessarily video. And that 5 hours of video is not so different than the historical norms for television viewing, right? It's just that it's now across different devices, and so it's revolutionary in that sense. But for me, it's not quite that. And like we said with reading a few weeks ago, it's now choppy. There's a lot of binge watching and a lot of long form, but man, we used to do our 5.5 hours, started by digesting our dinner and fall asleep in front of the television 5 hours later. Now it's spread out across the day in 5, 20, 1 hour chunks.
So the FX data that was shared, this is the FX network, essentially says this was the first year that scripted television, scripted video was more viewed online than on basic cable.
Yep.
Now the numbers are still it's a percentage point or two in that direction.
And let's clarify one thing. And I think they were a little too clever by half with the title that caught me. It is the number one form. They have broadcast and cable being number 2 and number 3. It turns out broadcast plus cable almost double online, right? I didn't realize that until I really went in depth on the article. It's like it's past cable, which is also slightly ahead of broadcast television, right? So it's the number one form for scripted video. And look, and it doesn't matter whether it's winning because it's over 51% or because it's over 35%. The change is so fast, and it will very soon be 2/3. I can use my old Jupiter forecasting to see that the growth has been so astronomical, and with Netflix paying crazy dollars for new programming, it's just going to continue. So does it matter though, Steve? Like, does it matter where and how we consume it?
Well, so I was in LA last week and coincidentally was out to dinner and ran into Jeffrey Katzenberg. And, he has this new, I guess it's a network service called, I always mispronounce it, Quibbits.
Yeah. Kibitz.
No, there's a Q in there somewhere. But it, his thesis is that viewing is moving towards short form, and no one has dominated or owned short form, high quality, big actors, big looking short form segmentized nonfiction. And he's raised
nonfiction.
I'm sorry, fiction. My apologies. Fiction.
Right.
And he's raised an enormous amount of money. Yeah. Close to $2 billion. And when he started out going down this road, a lot of people raised an eyebrow. And I think people are maybe less doing that now.
Gosh, again, I think it's an and thing. I believe that's going to be a big opportunity. I don't see how somebody's going to own that distinctly. I think they're going to be verticals that are going to have to step in there, and it's unrealistic. Now, maybe if he can crack the code on the production and wrapping and chunking of this stuff, as well as kind of ad formats and things like that go along with it. It's interesting, but man, this is the heyday. I think the biggest question, other than two questions. One is, can a Netflix is Netflix the Amazon of TV, which is to say it has to just forget about profits for years to just make sure it maintains market share and throw so many dollars. But maybe more importantly, is there enough quality out there for it to be tripling in the amount of scripted stuff that happens in a few short years? Is that worth it? Does it ruin the mass power of it all, or who cares if it's good stuff? Because right now we're in a glory day of what we used to call television.
So let me confess something about my viewing habits and how they've changed, because it may be illustrative. So Netflix seems to have found this stream of Americanizable offshore content that I never found it. So for example, there are at least 2 series from Canada that I really like.
I'm watching one from Poland right now, right? 1983. It's amazing.
So somebody discovered it, bought it, did a deal with the maker. The packager that seems to always be on a lot of the newer shows that I'm seeing on is a brand called FilmRise.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know who they are, but they seem to scoop up Canadian content for non-Canadian distribution. The one that you're watching in English subtitles or voiceover dubbed.
Well, we can do a whole show about the globalization of tech products. But one of the things I think is really notable is subtitles have gone mainstream. It's authentic. It's good. If those of you that are familiar with the Ferrante novels that were a literary sensation, the first part of them have been on HBO the last few weeks. My Brilliant Friend. I thought cynically that it was going to be so Americanized it was going to be terrible. Unbelievably authentic, all subtitles. And this is a move to niche, but it's kind of dragging the mainstream into a little headier ground, up to a point anyway, right? So
we're almost out of time, and there were just a couple of apps I wanted to just give a hat tip to, because there is some interesting things going on the app side of video, and I think it's a mistake to simply say television's it. So one of them is this app TikTok.
Yep. Which I've played around, or I've had my children help me play around.
Right? It's kind of fun in a weird kind of karaoke kind of way.
Well, I think that this shows up off the trend towards stories. These are mashups where video is kind of the most compelling piece of it, but involves a lot of mixed media and a lot of real-time me update stuff that's a lot more entertaining than the old I'm going around the corner to get an egg sandwich in a tweet.
And then 2 more really quickly, and then we'll be out of time. Like Facebook's pushing really, really hard to do this watch party co-viewing thing.
Yep.
Did you ask your focus group whether there's any chance that's going to work?
Well, I created a company called House Party about 15 years ago to go after that exact opportunity. It's still around. And look, there's different versions of this, but they're trying to capture. They noticed without a doubt that this was already existing behavior that they wanted to aggregate together and sell some ads over, because people are doing this alongside games and Oscar viewing and everything else. And whether it's happening in text or Facebook or whatever, they want to make the space for that to happen, whether it involves the shared viewing or not. My company, by the way, House Party, would link together homes where groups were viewing things together. Hey, maybe there's some social benefit here to watching things together again instead of glued to our own sets.
Yeah, I don't know. I know they're pushing me really hard to use it. It shows up a lot on Facebook, and I don't feel compelled to watch things.
See, this reminds. So, in what context do they do it? Because if they don't attach it to the specific programming that you might be interested in doing it to, like, it doesn't have relevance to me, right? It's like I would rather be brought in because I'm watching UVA basketball or My Brilliant Friend or the Oscars. Like, I don't think they can approach it horizontally.
They're trying to get video makers to have premiere times.
Yeah, I understand.
Because then they can say, hey, everybody, there's a premiere. It's happening now. All right. And then last but not least, just because I wanted to end on some good news, there's this interesting company, Ving,
Yeah.
which just raised $7 million to upgrade generic ringtones with viral videos. I like the name. The guys seem friendly. That's a lot of money. Good for them.
It's in trend, right? It's the same thing, video, can get everywhere. I'll gripe with one thing, since I'm not hating things as much anymore, as a product segment. I don't think bandwidth right now is up to the task. I think it's an embarrassment how terrible the providers are. You and I have talked about this offline. Sometimes it's hard to even get the right bandwidth to just do a podcast remotely, but that's going to be a big issue, and we'll see what happens with all the new Gs that are coming up in cellular, versions of this. But that could be a braking mechanism in this whole space.
Yeah, I agree. Hating Spectrum every day, and they keep raising my prices.
Oh my gosh, they trick you. You think you've bought the highest level, and all of a sudden a new level is introduced.
Yeah.
This is net neutrality, by the way, run amok, the lack of.
Yeah. And on that cheerful note, we are out of time. Have an excellent week. Continue to pedal forward, and we'll explore a new topic next week. See ya.
So